So the wait is finally over for the Pendragon Cycle trailer. Daily Wire dropped it just last night. And this has been long awaited. I think they've delayed the release for a while as it's still been in development. And finally it's done. And I think they said it's scheduled for release early Christmas Day for their All Access members, but it's out publicly available in January 2026. Here is Jeremy Boring's caption just before we react to the trailer. As a teenager, Stephen Lawhead's The Pendragon Cycle reshaped my understanding of faith, courage, and purpose. It rejected the shallow, nice Christianity of my youth and revealed a kind of Christian whose faith was forged in blood and sacrifice, a world where the battle for king and country was inseparable from the battle for Christ and his kingdom. That story changed me, and I've spent years bringing it to life for the screen. This is The Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin, a new scripted series from Daily Wire and Bonfire Legend adapted from Lawhead's extraordinary novels. The cast and crew bled to make it. It is without question the largest and most ambitious production ever undertaken by a conservative new media company. It is also the most masculine, muscular work of Christian art since Braveheart, and it begins with a sword. So let's take
go
a
ahead.
look.
So here, it's Seamus over there. Here we go.
This land is in a welter of confusion. There are more kings than sheep, more princes than crows on a battlefield. All seeking to snatch what they can, when they can, without a care for who suffers. Until this island is ruled by one who wields both justice and mercy, there will be no peace.
Look at them. Boys playing the game of kings. They say they have the Merlin with them. The Merlin died long before you and I were born.
I've seen what you can do.
This is where it begins.
That's a really well edited trailer, like the highest level of production value I've seen.
Well, so this was made. You know, Bonfire Legend is Dallas Soninier. He made Bone Tomahawk. He's a very accomplished movie producer. Production value was never something that I was concerned about for this.
Certainly,
if you wanna, if I wanted to correlate it back, I know people are making the comparison to Game of Thrones, but if you get a chance, if you never saw the series, go back and rewatch the trailers for the show Marco Polo. That was on Netflix back in like 2014. It was supposed to be like their response to Game of Thrones back when Netflix first started dumping like a bunch of money into the, you know, making their own stuff rather than just licensing their content out. It felt closer to that than, say, a Game of Thrones, if you were looking for a comparison.
Before we give our reactions, I wanted to read another statement that Jeremy Boring gave to The Hollywood Reporter. He said, that the novels by Lawhead present a visceral, masculine Christianity in a world of conflict and mystery. It isn't saccharine or clean. In short, it is very much like our world. I'm so happy to share our adaptation and the work of our remarkable cast and crew with the Daily Wire audience. I hope he means people outside of the Daily Wire audience as well. that cast includes Tom Sharp starring as Merlin, and they also list Rose Reed, James Arden, Finney Cassidy, Miles Cloessy, Brett Cooper, Alex Lawrence Phillips, Daniel Fathers, and Emery Franklin.
Yeah. I did notice that there was only one shot of Brett Cooper in there.
Very short. I thought that she was a pretty major speaking role in the series, given the amount of time she spent in Hungary while they were filming.
Yeah, they like built her a studio
so I was
over there
expecting to see
record.
like at least one part of her speaking in the trailer.
I'm assuming that that's I can't speak to it, but that may
I
be
don't know.
a political decision on their part there. Seamus, I saw you flinch a couple of times.
Yeah, so initially I was very impressed. The production value is very clearly high, and it's obvious that they're trying to make something that can compete with mainstream Hollywood. I have no idea why there needed to be a half-naked woman prancing around in her underwear. I have no idea why there needed to be a scene of two actors making out. I think that conservatives can't win the culture war without making culture, and our culture can't feature the devil's iconography. We can't use the tools that have been used against us to subjugate us in our own media. Porn has been used as a tool for political control. We are weaponizing people's lust to make them complacent, and the conservative movement cannot engage in that tactic to gain a modern audience, because if we do so, we've already lost. We've become the left. This would be like if 50 years from now, someone goes, I'm making entertaining content, but of course we have to put trans kids in it, and it's still conservative. Like, we can't just be progressives who drive the speed limit.
Well, obviously the comparisons to Game of Thrones are gonna come about, and that would happen regardless of whether they included nudity or intimacy scenes, whatever you want to call them, in the show. But that was such a short clip of that scene that they showed in the trailer. I couldn't tell, like, were they clothed in that scene where they were making out?
Yes.
They were clothed.
It looked like they were nude.
I couldn't tell. They were wearing clothes?
Yes.
And someone was saying, like,
Okay.
oh, maybe they're married. Yeah, I don't need to see married people nude on screen.
Obviously,
that's the point.
The Game of Thrones stuff is like, it's incest, it's full-on porn in Game of Thrones. It's like as raunchy as humanly possible for TV. And that was kind of new for the time period when Game of Thrones came out, because we were coming off of going from network television to streaming shows. They weren't...
Okay, no. It does look like at least he is not wearing clothes.
Well, he's like shirtless
yes.
from the waist up or whatever.
Yes.
Is she wearing clothes?
I can't tell. The way it's
Okay, if
framed,
you
I
can't tell, then it's like,
It's probably
I don't know what to make of that.
Again, so the thing here is that this could be the type of thing where when it comes out, it cuts from that right away, and they use the
Perhaps.
juiciest part of that in the shot to get people to look into it. So my look, and when you look at stuff like this, you're going to get a middle ground here from a lot of with the amount of money that gets dumped into something like this. You're just going to have people that are going to say, look, and again, I have not read the books. I know you guys, you said you were familiar with the author, but hadn't read the
No,
novel.
I don't know
No,
anything about
I
this.
hadn't even heard of the series until they announced the show.
So I just, when I see something like this, again, as somebody who's not religious, none of that bothers me. And I feel like there is a certain level of, there's a difference, and there's a certain, I get your argument about driving the speed limit, but the idea of like nudity and incest, and then what we see here, given that I don't know the entire full context of it, is that you're going to find people who are going to be more in the middle, who are going to be like, okay, like this doesn't bother me as much as this very clear depiction was disturbing.
Needless to say, Game of Thrones is just taking that like on a whole other level.
There's no argument that this is going to be on the level of Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
they're going to do anything like that. I
No,
just don't
I
think
mean-
it's necessary, and I don't think it's good.
I'm merely speaking to the idea of comparing one to one with the with the nudity and stuff. And like I said, all the shows that are high fantasy have this type of stuff in there. So if what you're getting is like, and again, haven't read the books, people in a relationship and they don't show the whole scene, that's vastly different than, like I said, Marco Polo had nudity. Game of Thrones, lots of
Lots
nudity.
of the historical
It's-
fiction
yes,
shows
they do.
this.
It's part of the culture around making that type of material. It's just the way that is. And I think when they look at stuff like this, what I'm imagining was, what would this have looked like to them if, like I said, they had Jeremy Boring talking to the Hollywood Reporter. What would have happened if they didn't put like a Daily Wire header before that trailer, and this was just shown to people because I didn't just look at it from the post from the Daily Wire. I saw that it also got picked up by some of these other general Hollywood channels that cover, anytime a new trailer comes out, they post it up there, and a lot of the people said like they were surprised at how good it looked for a Daily Wire production. So they're already working at a disadvantage if the idea here is to get the story out there. And I think that there is a clash here sometimes where, as much as they want to talk about conservative values, it becomes about this story meant something to me. And if he's being honest to the story, he's letting his religious values take a backseat because he's an artist first. And then you have to be willing to engage in the discussion of how much of a backseat are you willing to let it take.
The ultimate aim is for people's responses to just be, praising the production, not saying it with the qualifier, wow, this is really good for a conservative media
that's also
company.
a big part of it. Because the bar is unfortunately really low. But this is also, and part of the reason it's disappointing to see that with such a high production value is because we need to be trying to change the industry, and we shouldn't be trying to have the industry change us.
Sure. Yeah, I would say like maybe we're jumping to a conclusion. Maybe in the show it's edited very well.
Trailers are done that way to pull you in.
And I do think there's a way to imply, like, you can imply sex in a show or a movie without showing it and do so in a tasteful way.
Would I tell you the story about David Duchovny laughing about the idea of gratuitous nudity because he said all nudity is gratuitous? Now he comes from the position of somebody who doesn't care. He goes, I mean, really, does any sex scene need to be in a TV show? No. So any amount of nudity is gratuitous nudity.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, maybe in the final product, it's not really in your face
also,
like that.
Look,
I just think we shouldn't have any of it. I think especially for a conservative company that's marketing itself as promoting family values.
But these companies now, look, in the age that we live in now, the right has become a big tent company, a big tent policy, and there are people who they're looking to appeal to that aren't strictly religious.
Well, that's why I was kind of second guessing the statement, we're excited to bring this to the Daily Wire audience, because I thought the goal, and maybe this is just a difference in wording, I thought the goal was to bring this outside of the Daily Wire audience. Well, okay, not at the expense of their mission as a media company, but to promote their mission. And another thing that I thought was interesting about the wording of that statement he gave was the emphasis on masculine Christianity. I wonder why that needs to be stated so strongly. Like what exactly is that combating? Like compared to Hollywood productions? I mean,
maybe the idea is that like you don't get a lot of examples at all.
Like the examples in Hollywood.
Braveheart, you got Passion of the Christ, I guess, like it was a 2004.
But then for the most part, portrayals of Christians and the Christian faith in Hollywood productions have more to do with villainizing Christian characters rather than
valorizing,
rather than emasculating, right? So there's this huge emphasis that he's putting on like portraying visceral masculine Christianity, and I just wonder how they executed that.
Yeah.
And why is that like the selling point?
Well, perhaps,
it's a selling point that was repeated like at least 3 times.
Perhaps we review it when it comes out and do something like that. Look, if I were them, I would have focused. This is just me, speaking as somebody who is not religious. And like you said, if we were to operate under the premise that what they're doing here is to try to reach to people outside of the Daily Wire's, current audience, is you sell it on the fantasy elements. Like you mentioned Merlin and the character and the story and the specific story beats, maybe not the overall themes that you're looking to touch on as a way to grab people in. Because what I could imagine for something like this is imagine that the best case scenario is this does really, really well. It's really, really well made. And like I said, Dallas Sonnier and Bonfire Legend, they've done great work. They have a great track record. But the idea would be that, 20 years from now, somebody watches this on like Tubi, and then they find out after the fact, like not even knowing what the Daily Wire was, that it was a conservative media company that made it because it had an appeal that ranged beyond just their typical conservative audience, and with that, maybe excluding the stuff that involve the stuff you're talking about there, but the other themes that they're talking about, whatever they mean by masculine Christianity, ends up, taking root in somebody who watches this years later, who doesn't have a preconceived bias about what a company like the Daily Wire means when they produce their entertainment.
Yeah. Well, you asked people for their thoughts on
got
X. So
a lot.
what were the sort of responses that you got?
So they ran the gamut. A lot of people were like, so Raymond says, the trailer is solid. If the story gives the vibes that the trailer does, I'm so down for a new saga. The whole aesthetic feels like the Last Kingdom series, but more fantasy based. I really liked that series. I saw people compare it to early seasons of Vikings, that show, which went a whole different direction in later seasons. Some people considered the Daily Wire a non-starter. They didn't want to support the Daily Wire. Other people said that they were open to checking it out. Either way, this person says,
Is it really a limited series, or
I believe it's a limited series. So it says, this person said, Iron Will Forge says the trailer looks awesome, looked good so far. Daily Wire has had some issues with their productions, some good, some bad, but this quality looks really good all around. Very good story development. Characters looked interesting. All the Daily Wire money seems to be pairing off.
I think
this person says, if we want a contrary opinion, this person said, Dookie Pox says, this is a nearly shot for shot, every single fantasy movie trailer I've ever seen, as if generated by a generic fantasy movie trailer generator. So here's the thing. Trailer making these days has become very, very formulaic. I've talked about this endlessly on here. There's a thing called, it's every action movie trailer ever, and it's low bois, generic statement about fatalism, high visual effects shot. They follow a formula because the formula works. There's a reason why you don't hear trailer voice anymore. They've gotten away from the idea of the
world.
You don't hear that anymore. They go through phases, and if the idea here is that they're looking to pull people in with the push for a fantasy production, for the people who aren't conservative, this will ring to them as something high fantasy, even if they don't necessarily know what it is.
Well, and to be clear, part of the reason I'm so disappointed with what's lewd in the trailer is because I actually think the other parts of it do work well. It's clear that they invested their money in ways such that they were able to make a production that does look like mainstream Hollywood. When I saw the first scene of the battle scenes are not easy to do, and it's not easy to get that right as far as a period goes, getting everyone in the right armor, getting those costumes done. So it's obvious they put a lot of effort into the production value here. I'm not scoffing at any of that. My concern is just about the morality of it and rising above the cesspool instead of participating.
Yeah. We have a
20 there.
$20 super chat from High Voltage 75. For the record, Seamus's last appearance was episode 365, all the way back in May 2023. Okay, I was wrong.
So it was after
About a
Roe was
year
overturned.
after the Roe v. Wade episode. That episode ran 2 hours and 40 minutes and generated 9 crisis parties. No pressure.
Wow.
That's a pressure on you guys if you want to make that happen. The one thing I'll say, as for my opinion, is this isn't my genre anyway.
Mine either. High fantasy's never
high
been my
fantasy
thing.
shows or movies really. But for the people who are interested in that genre, regardless of what bias they may or may not hold toward Daily Wire as a company and their values, asking people to subscribe and pay for it is already a big ask, because they already have subscriptions likely to the mainstream platforms, and they have access to this endless library of other content. So asking people to subscribe in order to watch is already a huge barrier to entry for most people, regardless of whether they feel negatively towards the Daily Wire or if they're neutral or positive.
My hope would be that eventually there ends up being some type of VOD option for the whole season, for the people that, again, I know why they don't do that. I know why the whole point of the business model is to get people to subscribe to the platform, but VOD would be a good way to go for something like this. Also, maybe this is just crazy, but there are a lot of people, given the fact that I'm in the entertainment side of this space, would be to do a Blu-ray and a steelbook and release a physical media version of this with high grade art to accompany it. If the idea,
and they did all of these behind the scenes videos before the trailer came out, that would be included too.
Well, here's my question to you guys, because obviously the fantasy genre has been popular. Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, is one of the greatest trilogies ever made. I don't generally enjoy fantasy. I don't usually watch it. Obviously, LOTR is an exception. And then everyone was really into Game of Thrones for a while. I'm curious what you guys think about the current popularity of fantasy as people who keep up with pop culture, because I don't pay as much attention to this space. Are people still as jazzed about the genre as they were 10 years ago?
The most recent
House of the
example
Dragon.
is either House of the Dragon or The Witcher.
And there is another Game of Thrones spinoff that just got a trailer recently, but it's
Really?
kind of going the way of like what Walking Dead did to.
Yeah, it's fantasy slop.
It's kind of like superheroes a couple of years ago. It's like eventually you reach that zenith, and it just
Right.
doesn't have that. When Game of Thrones came out, the size and scope of the production mattered, right? So they capture that in here, but size and scope of that nature in 2025 doesn't mean the same as what it did in 2012 when Game of Thrones came out.
Well, also, here's a question that I have about this genre, or I'm sorry, a point I was going to make. It was so popular. I don't know if you guys watched The Walking Dead, if you were like masochistic enough to stick with that show.
For most of it.
Yeah, when I think it took, I'm such a loyal person that it took until like season 9 or something for me to finally go, why am I doing this to myself?
I think same.
Because when I enjoy a show, even if it really lets me down, I want to see where it goes anyway. But one thing I noticed is at some point, they kind of almost tried doing a Game of Thrones style thing where there were like a bunch of different
there's like
tribes
9
competing.
Right,
And some of the
right.
people, like that one guy spoke in Old English and had a tiger. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that
Like,
was...
It was like the fantasy genre was so popular at that time because of Game of Thrones that even The Walking Dead, it
jumped
appeared
the
to me
shark so bad.
so bad. And they were totally trying, I think they were trying to do a Game of Thrones style thing.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.